This is one of my favorite sections. I can't wait to get into this stuff. We are starting Chapter 5, Lesson 5.1. We are using the fundamental identities. Our essential question is, can you recognize and write the fundamental trig identities? You can. So the reciprocal ones you already know. Sine, the opposite is 1 over cosec. Cosine, 1 over sec. Tan, 1 over cotan. Cosec, 1 over sine. Sec, 1 over cosine. And cotan, 1 over tan. So we kind of started to touch on this stuff, and you guys were doing awesome with it. And let's look at a couple more things that you need to know. These we touched on as well. The tan, remember, is sine over cosine, and cotan is cosine over sine. We also talked about the Pythagorean identities. Sine squared u plus cosine squared u equals 1. 1 plus tan squared u equals secant squared u. U is just a variable here. 1 plus cotan squared u equals cosecant squared u. And I like to just think that the c's are together on this one right here. These cofunction identities and the even-odd identities, I do not expect you to memorize. I do expect you to be familiar. Meaning, when you're given a test or a quiz from me, you will not have to know these by heart. But I do want you to be familiar, so let's take a look. Sine of pi over 2 minus u is equal to cosine, and vice versa. Tan pi over 2 minus u is equal to cotan, and vice versa. Secant pi over 2 minus u is equal to cosecant, and vice versa. I noticed I missed a c right here, so I'll fill it in. This should say cosecant of u. Cosecant of u times pi over 2 minus u is equal to secant. All right, let's take a look at the even and odd identities. Notice sine and cosecant come out negative, and tan and cotan also come out negative, where cosine and secant are not. Again, these are things that I will make sure that you are familiar with through homework and get practice on them, but you will not be tested or quizzed without a little cheat sheet. So these are the only things you would be given on a cheat sheet. Now, let's talk about the things that we need to know. Use the values of sine x equals 1/2 and cosine x is greater than 0 to find all the trig functions. Well, if we know that sine of x is equal to 1/2, what does cosine of x have to be? Good, it would have to be root 3 over 2, where the tan is 1 over root 3, which I know when I rationalize the denominator, I have root 3 over 3. When I flip them all, the cosec is 2, the sec is 2 root 3 over 3. Hopefully you could start rationalizing like that a little bit in your head. And the cotan is root 3. And our big hint here was when cosine is greater than 0. So the fact that cosine is greater than 0, I know that cosine has to be positive. All right, this is where the fun begins. I love this stuff. It's super fun. And we are going to have to start noticing some things. So for this, the first thing I notice is I have 1 minus sign, and I have 2 cosecants. So I'm probably going to factor out this cosecant to see what happens. When I factor out this cosecant of x, I have the cosine squared x minus 1. Well, if I look back on my Pythagorean identities right here, if I had the cosine squared x minus 1, wouldn't this come over here to be subtracted, which means that this sine squared x, in this case it's a u, would be over here to be negative? So I'm going to change this to, this is cosecant of x times negative sine squared x, because I just replaced it with cosine squared x minus 1 is equal to negative sine squared x. Well, I also know that the cosine of x is 1 over, because I know my reciprocal identities. So this is equivalent to 1 over the sine of x. And I know that sine of x can go into negative sine squared x, negative sine of x times, and anything times 1 is itself. So the answer here is negative sine of x. All right, I'm going to have to make a few videos on this, so that is to get us started. Great job.